All right. And good day, everyone. And welcome to today's session of Truly Foundation and a Course in Miracles with your host, your guide, your teacher, your coach, Oliver Blue. And I'm so delighted to be here today. And I'm excited about the lesson that we're going to unpack today, that we're going to make commentary on. It really needs no commentary, it really needs no explanation. And one thing about A Course in Miracle is that it is not complex, it is not a difficult write or a difficult read, and it gets straight to the point. Each sentence, each word is strategically um, placed within these texts in such a way that we would just basically have to say that I just don't want to. I don't want to know. I don't want to understand. I don't want to even consider. You'd have to just completely check out. That's why most people that get their hands on the course, they can't take their hands off of it, because again, the Course in Miracles is but one form of the many forms that have been downloaded to us, to humanity, to help us to, number one, get freed from our identity crisis. It's given to us to once and for all to be able to distinguish between that which is real and that which is not real. It's given to humanity to get us unstuck. Meaning, stuck means we're not making any progress. We're not making any advancement, even though we are an advancing species. We are a species of evolution. We are a part of life, which at the very nature of life is progress, advancement, evolution, growth, extension, expansion. And so there's no wonder why there's so much ill and angst and anxiety, so much depression and so much fear and anguish and suffering and pain that humanity goes through, because it just appears that we're just resisting what is. We're just putting up a resistance to our very own happiness. It's like we're putting up a resistance to our very own fulfillment. It's like we're putting up a resistance to our very own existence by insisting on finding another way or having our own way. When the way has been set, the way has been fixed. There is but the one way. And that one way is the way of life. That is a part of our very own nature. And this very own life was created and extended with us in mind. And so we've read all the history books. We've been on this journey. We've lived some years, if you're listening to me. We already have seen the tragedy of humanity. We've already seen the good of humanity also. But there's still too much darkness. There's still too much suffering, too much pain, too much anguish, too much lack of not knowing, too much lack of understanding, too much lack of the use of the understanding that we already have. And so in today's lesson, I love this lesson. And we're starting a new section in this journey home to our completion of this project. And this section is on the theme, or will answer the question about what is real creation. What is creation? What is creation? Not from our point of view, but from the point of view of A Course in Miracles, and from the point of view that is consistent with love, that is consistent with reality, that is consistent with that which is true, that which is knowledge, that which is of the one law, which is the law of love, or the law of God. What is creation from the point of view of eternity? What is creation from the point of view of a changeless and unalterable reality from the one source, from the reality of oneness, that there's God and there is nothing else, and God is the one source, and everything that is in existence is in existence only because of the one source. So what is the nature of that source? Because if we understood the nature of that source, we will understand that which is real, that which can only be extended, or that which can only be after the same image, after the same likeness of the source itself. If we understood the source of the life that we all share. And so I think some and all of these questions are going to be answered as we go through this lesson on what is creation. Most of us are familiar with the creation story that is written in the book of Genesis, in the Old Testament of the Bible. There is an account of creation. But if you really understood what's there, and if you really understood that science in and of itself prove that, this earth, this world is more than 6,000 years old, you would understand that has to be, not that that has to be the conclusion is that that's not the beginning of the creation of this world. And it's certainly not the beginning of creation, because creation in its ultimate sense was before the foundation of this world. It was before there was any time or any space that creation, in the sense which has no beginning or end. So you really can't put a time on it or a space. You can't put your finger on it. All we know is that creation is the process by which all life, all living things has its source. And it is the process by which all living things are held together. And so what we would see there in the book of Genesis, when it talks about what it's really talking about is the recreation of the earth. Because if you would really read your Bible, you'll see that it talks about the earth being dark, being formless and dark, and submerged in water. So actually, that whole account in Genesis is a account of the restoring of an earth that had been plunged into darkness. And so it's a story of the recreation of that earth that had been plunged into darkness. And that's why you would see certain terms in Genesis, like, replenishing the earth, meaning that it was plenished before. It talks about calling out things that was already there. That means it was already there. So what we see in Genesis is almost like a repair job. That even time and space existed before the 6,000 year history we have that led from the point that is written in Scripture. So if you didn't know that, that's something to consider. But science has already proved that the earth is more than 6,000 years old. We got proof of that, physical proof. And so when we understand that, then we can't say that the life began or heaven and earth began 6,000 years ago, because there's proof that that's not true. But the Bible and the way it's been taught to the history of humanity, most of humanity believe that's the beginning of time. That's the beginning of a life. That there was nothing existed prior to 6,000 years ago. And that's not true. There's too much evidence that that's not true. So even in that, you'd have to step back and say, okay, if that's not true, then my thinking is going to be off. And most of us, including me, I went through a season where my thinking was off, where it concerning what is the beginning of time, what is the beginning of creation. And so we're going to learn today that creation is formless. It was before time and space. It was before there was any form of matter. And that it has no beginning and it has no end. It's infinite, meaning no beginning and no end. You can't go to a point and say, this is when it began. And you can never get to a point where you'll say, this is where it ends. Because there's no end or no beginning or no end to the source of life. Life has always been. Life has always been. Life will always be. God has always been. God will always be. I remember when I was in my 20s and I tried to figure this thing out in my mind. I tried to reason it in my mind, and it blew my mind. I could not put my mind in its natural thought to come up with a logical explanation of life and birth and creation. Not in my natural thought pattern. And so I had to go on a search. I had to go on a journey. And here I am almost 40 years later. 40 years later. And I have more awareness. I have more understanding. And it makes me happy. And so let's see what it says. Let's see what it says. So what is creation? The Course says that creation is the sum total. It is the sum. It is the complete. It is the all. It's the all encompassing. It is the sum total of all the thoughts of God. Let me say that again. Because if one could just receive this idea, it will cause a huge shift in your thinking. It will cause a huge shift in your being. That what creation really is, it is the sum total of all the thoughts of God. And God only. Just think about that. Every thought, every imagination, every idea, that the source of all life, the source of all existence, the sum total of all the thoughts, all the imagination, all of the ideas, which are infinite. We're talking about an infinite source. So if it's an infinite source, that means what? There's no end. That means that there are still more thoughts being created. There's more ideas. There's more imagination that is continuously going on. And it will forever be going on. There is no end to the thoughts of an infinite source. There's no end to the ideas that the infinite source can imagine. And so the sum total of all of the infinite thoughts of this infinite source, it says, this is what creation is. So nothing is excluded. No thought of God is excluded from creation. And so that means that in number, the thoughts are infinite, meaning there is no beginning, there's no end. They're just, the natural mind cannot phantom this statement right here. You can't hold that in your mind, that the sum total. So how can you get to a sum if it's infinite? How can there be a sum? Because our idea of sum is that, there's a beginning and there's an end. There's a, the sum total of 5 and 5 is 10. So there's a beginning and an end. But here it's talking about no beginning and no end being the sum. And they say that the sum is infinite in number. And that it's not only infinite in number, but these thoughts, these ideas of God are everywhere without limit. Phantom that. Bring that thought into the mind. The individual mind. The individual mind can't hold that. But the universal mind that we all share, that we all have access to, it not only can phantom it, but it is the place where it is the supply house where we have our connection to get every thought and every idea imaginable. So I'm going to read it again. Creation is the sum of all of God's thoughts. In number, infinite, meaning there's no end and there's no beginning. And all of God's thoughts are everywhere. That means they're omnipresent, without any limits. Meaning there are no limitations to the thoughts, to the ideas, to the imagination of the infinite source of all things. Wow. And just think, this is what we are a part of. Though we live in a world that appears to be a world of limitation, though we seem to be attached to a body that has limitations, an environment where there's time and there's space, which is limited. Everything about this world of perception that we are associated with, everything about it is limited. Everything about it has limitation. Everything about it has duality. But here we're being asked to imagine a state of being where there is an infinite source of thoughts and ideas that has no limitation at all. And so there's a dilemma there. Whose report are we going to believe? Are we going to believe the report of every thought of God being infinite and everywhere present, and that we're a part of that? Or are we going to embrace the limited idea of a limited self living in a limited world? Which idea, which report will we believe? Those are the choices that we have. And so it says only love creates. Only love creates. And we have all embraced the idea that love and God is synonymous. Like God is love. That is the nature of God. And so it says only love creates. And only love creates like itself. And so here's another essential element of what real creation is. It is the sum total of all. And all in this case is infinite. So we cannot say we can just wrap up all the thoughts and put them in one place and say, there is. That means you can't take 66, essays and put them in one book and say, that is all there is. That doesn't even align with the definition of creation. That doesn't even align with the definition of this infinite source of all life. That doesn't even align with love. That doesn't align with life. It doesn't align with oneness. So the whole idea that any one book or any one path or any one idea is the sum total of all creation, or it's the sum total of what's right, is preposterous. But we still continue to perpetuate it by saying if it ain't in a part of the 66, it ain't real. It ain't God. It ain't love. And see, that don't even align. When we think about it, that don't even align with the nature of God. As though we're going to put God in a box or put God in one book. It doesn't make sense when we think about it. It really doesn't make sense. So that means that a lot of cases we're not thinking. We're being robotic. Somebody have programmed us. Somebody have conditioned us with their idea and perpetuated that idea. And we're just like robots. Yes, yes, yes. And then we'll defend it with all of our heart when we haven't really thought for ourselves. How can you put that which is infinite in one box? How can you put it in one book? How can you put it in one path? How can you put it in one country? How can you put it in one party? How can you put it in just anything that is finite? You cannot put infinity in a finite existence. And everything about this world is finite. Everything about this world is temporary. How can you fit infinity in that which is infinite in a temporary state? It's impossible. See, when we begin to really think about these things, we will reevaluate everything that we have thought to be true to us. We'll begin to evaluate everything that we've been taught, everything that we've believed. And that's what we want everyone to do, so that we can get unstuck so that we can get beyond the limitations of this world, so we can get beyond the falsities and the illusions of this world. So every thought of God, without any limitation, that is everywhere present, that is created only like love and like itself. This is what creation is. So it can't be put in any box because there's no end to it. The moment you put it in something that is finite, you can't hold it there because it's still expanding. God is still expanding. Love is still expanding. Life is still expanding. Life is still extending. There's a never-ending upward spiral of becoming and experience. And there us try to put limitations on it. It doesn't work. It makes it painful for our experience when we say this is all there is. And so if we just get this one statement, creation is the sum total of all of love's thoughts. And it's infinite. And it's omnipresent. It's everywhere all the time. And it's always been everywhere all the time. There's not been a time when every thought of God has not been present. And it can only create like itself. And that is love. So when we see or experience miscreations, things that we know that are done that are not loving, that means that what? They are not thoughts of God. But these are thoughts that are outside of reality. And so we would have to be like hallucinating, fantasizing, in a state of dream or a state of trance to come up with unloving thoughts. Because they are not a part of every thought of God. God is love. God is light. God is life. So every thought of death, every thought of lack, every thought of scarcity, every thought of fear, every thought of doubt, every thought of inferiority, every thought of inequality, every thought of separation, every thought of division, every thought that is outside of love, they're not the thoughts of God. They're illusions. And we can live in those illusions. And that's why the awakening process is so important. So we can lay aside every illusion, every doubt, every fear, every anxiety, every sickness, every disease, all the ugliness, all the hatred, all the vitriol, all of these things that we observe that are so unloving. We can lay them aside when we embrace the reality of the creation of God, which is love only. It can only produce like or after its own kind. It only can imagine after its own kind. It is a closed system. It's not an open system. It's closed. But in that closed system encompasses everything that is good, everything that is loving, everything that is one in creation. And so there was no time when all that it created was not there. So it's omnipresent. Love is always present. Every thought of God is always present, and there's never been a time when it's not been present. Because every thought of God is before time and before space and before form. And so time and form, or this world of limitation, cannot alter or cannot change that which had gone before it. In fact, it was that which had gone before it that even allowed time and space to even have a stage to perform on. It's like if you don't have a screen, if you don't have a television screen, if you don't have a screen on your phone, if you didn't have a screen on your computer or on your pad, how would you see anything? There must be a screen. And that screen is symbolic of every thought of God. Because without the source, there's no stage to perform on. Without the light, how can we see? Without power, how can we have effect? Without every thought of God, and no thought is missing. Because for one thought to be missing is to be not every thought of God. And so there was never a time when all that it created was not there, nor will there ever be a time when anything that is created suffers any loss. In other words, that which God creates is eternal. So everything that you know that eventually dissipate, passes away, erodes, everything that you know that eventually it goes in reverse. Everything in form. Let me just say it. Everything that is in form, everything that is in time, all matter will eventually go back to the source of which it came. That means it is not eternal. It is not real. Like that body that we think that we are, it returns to the dust from which it came. It lets you know what your body is not real. And that's why you have to know you are not your body. Your body is just an instrument of expression. Who you really are is timeless and formless. Who you really are is invisible. Who you really are is what God is. And that your existence came out of every thought of God. You are a thought of God. You are a God idea. We think that we're a mama and daddy idea, but in reality, who we really are, we are a God idea. And ideas don't leave their source. That means that we can never leave. We can never separate. We can never depart from our source, which is God, our source, which is love. That means that we will forever and eternally be aware and conscious of our existence. You will never lose your consciousness or your awareness of your reality. Because God would have to lose his in order for you to lose yours, because you and God are one. You are the creation of God. You are every thought of God. You are, I am, and all living things created in the imagination of God. You are God's highest creation. You are God's only creation. And there was never a time that you were not present. There's never been a time that you didn't exist because you're infinite. There is no starting point to you, just like there is no end point to you, because you are part of the creation. You are what God extended, which is his very own self. That's why you and God are one. That's why Jesus said, when you see me, you've seen the Father. And he wasn't talking about his body. He was saying, when you really open your eyes and see that we are one, not in body. Bodies can't join. We can only be joined in spirit. We can only be joined in the one creation that we share, the one life that we share, the one being, the one source, the one infinite self that exists. We're all of that. We're all of that. And so he says, nor will there be a time when anything that is created suffers any loss. It is forever and forever, as God's thoughts, exactly as they were and as they are, unchanged through time and after time is done. So we are the creation of God. We are the very thought of God, and we are forever and forever exactly as they were and as they are. When God thought about extending his very nature, there you are. When God thought about creating in his own image and in his own likeness, there you are. Not as a body, but as an infinite being. Not as a separate being, but the same self. With the same attributes, with the same abilities. This is who we really are. This is the ocean we swim in. This is the power of our life. This is the intelligence that we share. And so God's thoughts are given all power that their own creator has. Let me say that again. God's thoughts are given all the power that the creator has. In other words, God and his thoughts are one. Just like on this level, this plane that we live on, we experience our thoughts, whether they're good or bad, because that's just the way the law works. As a man thinketh, so will he experience. Well, that law works where God is concerned. As God thinketh, so he experiences. And God only thinks and creates in love. And so as God thought to create in love, God created his very own self. And he called that self the I am, which we are. With the same power as the creator. There's no difference between the creator's nature and power and ability. There's no difference in the nature of the creator and his thoughts, because the creator is his thoughts. Just like we hear it said here, as a man thinketh, so is he. so is he. As a natural man thinketh, so is he. So also as a spiritual man thinketh, so is he. And so for God would add to love by his extension. And so the nature of love is extension, to continue to extend itself. Love gives, love extends, love expands. That is the nature. And that expansion and that extension is just like the very source itself. And so thus, what God has created, and God has created you and me, shares in that creation. So God extension shares in the creation, in every thought. That's why we have access, even in these bodily forms. We have access to every thought of God. We have access to all the intelligence of God. We have access to all the power of God. How do you think all of this stuff got made on this planet? All of the creations, all of the things that have been made on this planet, it came from, remember we talked about the screen. How can you see without the screen? So how can we even make anything without the source and the intelligence that comes from this infinite source, which is called God? And so thus his son shares in creation and must therefore share in power to create. That's why all human beings and our nature is to create. Even though when we don't have understanding, we miscreate. We create things that are detrimental to us ourselves. That's why we need understanding. We do not get to take time out from creation. We're always creating. We're always getting results. We're always experiencing what we created. We're always having to live in what we've made. And the majority of what we make is not in our best interest, but we have to live in it. A lot of the relationships we make, they're not in our best interest, but we end up having to live with them. So that's why it's so important for us to understand this creation process, to understand what creation really is. And that the power that we have to create just like our source. And so, what God wills, or what God has willed to be forever one, will still be one when time is over. There's only the one. There's only God and nothing else. And because we exist because of the creation process, because of the extension of God, we are a part of that oneness that we share. We share the oneness of God, and it will always share the oneness of God. God cannot deny his own self. For God to deny you would be to deny himself. For you to deny God will be for you to deny your own self. And so what God has willed to be forever one will still be one when time is over, and will not be changed throughout the course of time, remaining as it was before the thought of time began. In other words, we will always remain as the creation of God, and we will remain as God created us, regardless of what we may think, regardless of how we have fallen asleep. It doesn't change. It doesn't alter reality. It doesn't alter the oneness of God. It doesn't alter the every thought of God. And so creation is the opposite of all of the illusions that we have made. Illusions don't come from God. They come from us, from not knowing. It comes from us for falling asleep, from believing in an idea of separation, which leads to illusions. The idea of separation is an illusion, and it only leads to more illusions. If you think that you have been separated from your source, if you think that you are separate from all other humans, all other that are just like you, that are of the species of humanity, if you think you are separate from that, then you're thinking in a way that it says it is the opposite of reality. It's an illusion. It's not real. But that's not bad. All of us entertain illusionary ideas, false ideas about ourselves, false ideas about God, false ideas about each other, until there's an awakening, until there's an enlightenment. So we realize that we all are one. We all share in this same creation, that we are all a part of the sum total thoughts of God, that we are one, that there is no separation, there is no division, there is no sin, no guilt, no fear, there is no death, there is no lack, there is no scarcity, there is no birth or death, there is no coming and going, there's no beginning and end. All that happens in a world of perception. There is no opposites. There's no duality. All this is just a temporary play. It's not the real McCoy. This is not our home. These bodies are not who we are. And so creation is the opposite of illusions. Everything that is false, everything that is not real, creation is the opposite of that. Everything that has limitation, creation is the opposite of that. Everything that dies, everything that gets sick, everything that gets broken, everything that appear to be lacking or limited, everything that is in opposition to life and life more abundantly, it is an illusion. And we just need to know that. It's not a curse word. It's not a bad word. It just is what it is. And when we get tired of the illusion, when we get tired of the prodigal journey, we just say, hey, look, it's time to go home. This idea of creating another life other than the life that is no more fun. I'm tired. I'm exhausted. I'm overwhelmed. I'm frustrated. All these ideas, all these experiences come through a belief in a falsity, which the Course here calls illusions. For creation is the truth. Illusions are false. The idea that we hold about ourselves, that is not a God idea, it's an illusion. It's not the truth. And it leads to overwhelm, anxiety, fear, dread, suffering, pain, sickness, disease, the belief in death and separation. It leads all of that stuff. That comes out of us holding on to a falsity about ourselves and about our neighbor and about our Creator. And it's okay. Because the good news is God guarantees in every thought of God is the guarantee that eventually what God created will wake up to the truth. That means that eventually all of us will experience ourselves in an awakened state. You get to determine that when that happens. And it can happen in this lifetime. Because if we're here, it means that it haven't happened in all the other lifetimes that we've had. So here's another chance. Are we going to wake up in this lifetime? I say yes. I say I embrace the truth. I embrace the creation of God, that I am the creation of God. That I am what God is, and God is what I am. And for me to say that, I have to release all illusions. I have to let go of all falsities. I have to see with the mind of Christ. I have to understand my equality with God and with everyone. I have to embrace my equality. I have to let go of every sense of inferiority, every sense of sin consciousness, every sense of guilt or fear. It's all an illusion. I mean, it's not real. And all illusions have a beginning and an end. In creation, there is no beginning and end. That's the difference. It says, what God has will is forever one and still be and will still be one when time is over. I love that. And so creation is the opposite of all illusions, for creation is the truth, and creation is the holy. It said creation is the holy Son of God. All of creation is about you and me. All of creation has its attention, has its focus on you and me. That is the understatement. Words can't describe who you really are. Words cannot be found to adequately define who you are, because it's beyond words. Who you are, who I am, who humanity is beyond the words. It's beyond time and space. It's beyond the limitations of this world. All of creation is the holy Son of God. One, notice now, one Son, because it's only one of us. And that one is God. We're just in these body forms, we're just the expression of God in form. It's just an expression. How did God get in time and space? How did that which is infinite get into the what? It get into the finite. That's a mystery, right? Paul said it's a mystery. He said the mystery is that what? God in you, or God be you, Christ is you. So that means that heaven and earth have become one. That means that that which is in form has become one with that which is formless. So all of it is life, that God is in everything, in everywhere, and it's the power of God that holds all things together. So creation is the holy Son of God. For in creation is his will complete in every aspect, making every part container of the whole. Its oneness is forever guaranteed. God's oneness. Separation is a idea that doesn't exist. Division, all of these things that promotes multiplicity to give the idea that we're separate from our source and separate from one another. These are illusions. There's only the one. And so it says that it is, how did it say it here? I lost my spot. It says its oneness is forever guaranteed, forever held within the holy will, beyond all possibility of harm, all possibilities of separation, all possibilities of imperfection, and of any spot of sinlessness, of sin, that we are sinless. And so here it says that this oneness that we share with God is a guarantee, and it never will be violated, even through our human experience, that it is forever held within the holy will of God, the holy mind of God. that our oneness is forever beyond any possibility of being harmed, of you being separate from this oneness that you share with God, that you being imperfect, and of you having any kind of spot or wrinkle. It's never in jeopardy. It's never in violation. Only in dreams. Only in religion. Only in governments. Only in the world that is a world of illusion. And so we are creation. You want to know what is creation? You are creation. We, the creation of God. We, the offsprings of God. We, the not only cause, but the effects of God. We are creation. You want to know what creation is? Creation is you. In your truest sense. In your only sense. In your only reality. In truth, you are God's creation. You are every thought of God. You are every thought of God. It says that we seem to be discreet and unaware of our eternal unity with God. It seems that way. He said, yet back of all of our doubts and past all of our fears, there still is certainty. For love remains with all its thoughts. Its sureness is ours. God's memory is in our holy mind. The remembrance of who you are as God is in your holy mind. Is there. Seeking ye shall find, knocking it shall be open, asking it shall be given. It is there. This whole human experience is about finding yourself, is about the remembrance of God. You say, why did it take all of this? Well, it doesn't take all this. It's only taking this in a dream of separation. But when you wake up, the dream is over. And so when we embrace the reality, of our true identity, here at Truly Live, we call it at Truly Foundation, we call it what? The real you that loves you. This is what our message means. That you are the creation of God and you are changeless and unalterable. And when we wake up to this reality, everything changes. That means that all the illusions, all the falsity, all the darkness, it is dispelled. It goes back to the nothingness that it was for you in your experience now. It's not something that happens in the future, but it happens when you wake up, when you but recognize this reality right now. You can be in this world and awake, and they're making fun of the word, the idea of being awakened. You see what the world does? It does the opposite. It takes the very thing that has come to wake us up, and it makes what? It makes a mockery of it. You're not mocking people that the idea of being awakened. We're so silly. We're so silly. But in our silliness, we suffer. But when you wake up to the truth, the suffering is gone. The pain is gone. The agony is gone. And so it says, behind all of our doubts and all of our fears, there is a certainty. There is a remembrance of who we are. It says God's memory is in our holy mind, which knows their oneness and their unity with their Creator. You want to know your oneness and your unity with your Creator, that there is only one, that you and God are one and the same. That is the remembrance of God. That is the remembrance of your true self, the real you. It says, let our function be only to let this memory return, only to let God's will be done on earth, only to be restored to sanity, and to be but as God created us. So all of this human drama is about a return to sanity. It's about a return to reality. It's about a return to your true identity. That's what it's all about. It's not about the car or the horse or the money or the relationship or the job or the career or, the religion or the politics or, all the arts or the sport. It's not about all of that. That's just what we made. But what it's really about is you coming to know who you are, so that you can enjoy the arts and the money and the cars. And now you have a purpose. Now you understand that it's not for us to just consume or for us to hoard up these things, which you see that spirit is heavy in the land right now. I mean, we're storing up, we're hoarding up like never before. That's just an indication that we're afraid of something. We don't know who we are. That's all that is. That's an indication of doubt and fear. Where we feel like we got to hoard up armaments so we can defend ourselves. We got to hoard up land and food, and we just got to hoard it up as though we're going to be here for eternity. You ever notice that you hoard all this stuff up, but when your day comes, there is no horse and buggy pulling all your stuff. So what's the point? No, the point is we are here to remember who we are. If you never knew your purpose for having this human experience, it's so that you can remember who you are. Remember that you are the oneness that you share with God and each other and all humanity. That we remain as God created us. That we return to our sanity. That we let go all illusions. And so in conclusion, what is the creation? You are. You are it. You're everything. You're every thought of God. You're all the power of God. You're everywhere present. And you have all the intelligence at your fingertips. You are it. The tree ain't it. The animal ain't it. The plant is not it. The moon and the star is not it. It is you. You are everything, and everything is you because you are one with God. You are united with the source of all life, and so is all humanity. And so to wrap this lesson up on what is creation, if you never knew, you know now. That God is calling to all of us. Our Father, our Creator, is calling to all of us to wake up. We hear His voice. You hear my voice. You hear His voice even when you're not hearing my voice, because the voice of God is in all of us. It's a part of all of us. The voice of God came with us in this human experience to remind us of who we are. That still small voice that speaks to you when you finally get quiet, when I finally get quiet, that's the voice that speaks for God. That's the voice that speaks for love. That's the voice that reminds us of our infinite self, of our guiltless self, of our innocent self, of our loving self, of our pure nature. when we strip away all of the experiences, all of the activities, all of the conditionings, all of the sensations, everything that had been hurled upon us to get us to form an idea about us that is not true. When all of that stuff is removed, and it's removed by the hearing of faith, by the hearing of truth, by the recognition that, I'm going back home to my Father's house. This is a mess. I made a mistake. I made an error. So there's no judgment. Everything remains as it always was. And so we answer the call. We say yes to the Father. We say yes to ourselves. We say yes to truth. We say yes to life. And we hear this voice, and we forgive creation in the name of our Creator, which is holiness itself, whose holiness His own creation shares. We share in the holiness of God. And we forgive all that we have made to be a substitute. There is no substitute. There is no ideas or thought outside of the thoughts and ideas of God. Remember, creation is the sum total of all God's thoughts, not the sum total of the thoughts that we made out of fear and sin consciousness and guilt and doubt and unbelief. But it is the holiness that we share with God, whose holiness is still a part of you and me. It's still a part of us. We have not lost anything. Remember, in creation, there's nothing lost. So you've never been lost. They've written books about you being lost. They've written books about you being separated. They've written books. And they've had organized energy to convince you that you are separate, that you are a sinner, that you are not fit, that you are unworthy. Well-meaning. I was a part of that conversation at one time. I was a part of that belief system at one time. And we see the damage that it has made. But thank God for the redemption. Thank God for the revelation of the truth of who we are. And there are millions now waking up every day to the reality of us being the very creation of the one Creator. That we are God's only creation. We are God's creation. Paul says it this way, that we are to the praise of His glory. Hallelujah. It didn't say the angels were. It didn't say that the planets were. It didn't say that the earth was. It didn't say that the plants were. But it says that humanity, man, the man that God created in His own image, in own likeness, not the body self, but this infinite, impersonal self that God created. He said it is God's highest creation. It is every thought of God. You are every thought of God. And you see how far we have moved away from reality. But today we come back, just like the prodigal son. He went a long way from home to finally find himself. But he found himself. And that's what God guarantees, that every one of us will eventually find ourselves. You don't need another lifetime. You don't need another tragedy. You don't need any more proof. You don't need any more signs. You are the sign. You are the proof. You don't need another miracle. You are the miracle. So we just embrace it. We just accept the reality that we remain as God created us. We accept the reality that we are the holy creation of God, that we are holy, that we are righteous, that we are pure, that we're loving and lovable, that we are innocent, that we're whole, that we're complete, that we're missing nothing, and nothing is broken. And as we transform and renew our mind to this reality and align our minds to be in integrity and in alignment and in harmony with this reality, then our entire experience of being here will be the same experience that our elder brother experienced, where we remain in the presence of God at all time, in the peace of God at all time, and that we realize that all things have been freely given to us richly to enjoy. But that happens with understanding. And in all our getting, we need to get understanding so that we can awaken from the state of being asleep. We are what creation is. If you never knew it, you know it now. You heard it right here at Truly Foundation, that you are the creation of God, that you are every thought of God. Just think about that. You are every thought of a loving creator. You are every thought of a loving father. Every thought. That means you're never off the mind of God. How sweet it is to be loved by God. Thank you so much. Our next 10 lessons now will help support this idea, this thought of what is creation. The next 10 lessons will be supporting that reality to give us more insight and to help us to renew our thinking to that reality so that we become one with that reality and really show up as the light of the world. Thank you so much. We'll be back on tomorrow with our next lesson. Lesson number 321 or 331, one or the other. But we'll see you then. Have a great day. Bye-bye.